We're on the air.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to Kennebunkport Zoning Board of Appeals. Our agenda this evening has two applications by one applicant. And we have a series of minutes to go over. I actually have one other item to address that's on one of the applications, the application itself. But before we begin, and before I take attendance, want to welcome the newest member to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Kevin McDonald. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I'm glad you moved down one.
I did.
So I guess we should take roll call. Is Mr. McDonald
Here?
President?
Yes.
Fitzgerald?
I'm here.
Schlegel?
I'm here.
Defoe?
Here.
And Cadigan's here, so everyone's here except for Gordon this evening. Let's take a look at the series of minutes that we've been provided that we need to approve with limited parties voting on each set of minutes. So the first set we'll take is the older set, which is July 24, 2017. And this may be voted on by myself, Mr. Fitzgerald, Schlegel, Defoe, and President. So you all, I don't know if you just got these or you had these in the email beforehand. Has everybody had an opportunity to look them over?
Move to be accepted.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so they're unanimously approved. The second set of minutes is from August 20th, 2018. I will abstain on this one, and this will be President Fitzgerald, Defoe, and Schlegel. So one, well, somebody want to note the one thing that does need to change?
Yeah, there's just a typographical date at the top. The meeting wasn't August 20th, 2087. We haven't approached that yet. It's August 20th, 2018.
We'd all like to, though.
Yeah, really. We'll still be at this table.
So,
So I'll make a
Move to be
motion.
accepted as amended.
Yep, second.
all in favor? The four voting members approved unanimously. The last set of minutes, I'm debated whether or not we should go out approving them, but I think we might as well. So this is a meeting that was held on July 23rd, 2018. However, we did not have a quorum of the board, and so the meeting was adjourned without having taken any action, but we do have some minutes of that gathering. So this will be myself, Jim, and April. I don't have any changes.
So moved to be accepted.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so all three sets of minutes have been approved unanimously with only one edit, and that was to the minutes of
August 20th.
August 20, 2018. So before we get into the applications, I want to, but in using one of the applications, I'd like the board to just take a look at the application for home occupation. Not the applicant's full submission, but just go into the form application itself. So on the second page of the form application, under number 5, it reads, "It's a proposed conditional use subject to zoning board of appeals review is located in the shoreland zone or the resource protection zone. It must comply with the following standards established in section 510 of the land use ordinance." So I know you all observed this when you were studying these applications beforehand, but section 510 of the land use ordinance doesn't have anything to do with this board reviewing a conditional use. And instead it is, I think it's parking. Is it parking we determined? And this is the first time that we've had a home occupation that I can recall where the applicant does have property within the shoreland zone or resource protection zone. And so it really hasn't been an issue that I think the board has addressed before. But the reference to section 5.10, 5.10, is an erroneous reference. And I'm not sure, and I called and spoke to Warner briefly today, and I don't know if you need to get up for a minute, Warner. But thank you for getting up for a minute, Warner. But I did not, maybe you have the greatest knowledge of the ordinance in the room today. And I don't know if you found anything, I know that you talked about this and it looks a lot like 1010B.
That's correct, yeah. The closest reference that we found was in Article 1010B, which is the planning board section under guidelines for site plan review decisions being made in the shoreland zone. And so I believe that's where, I think in terms of a mix of a typographical error, it was referencing 1010B as opposed to 510.
But 1010B would not be applicable to our proceeding.
Correct. 1010B would be for the planning board and not for the zoning board of appeals.
So I'm not sure of how, how we proceed with that. Well, I mean, what I'd like to do is strike it from the application, but, from all future applications and pending application. But is that something that, I'm not sure if that comes under, you just do that, or do we need to say something with regard to that, or?
Well, what I was going to suggest is, and I was going to opine upon your time at some point to sit with staff and just go over the applications that we have, and so that we get kind of a comprehensive look at what we have and make sure that we don't have any incorrect references there. Yeah, I think it's appropriate to strike the reference to 510. I would prefer that the application just specifically refer to the performance standards that are in the ordinance, for the specific application, as opposed to conditions that are relative to a planning board site plan review.
So, in the future, we can do that, but for our purposes this evening, I was contemplating just, we can't really rewrite the application at this time, the application form, not your application. So I was gonna propose, board members, I was gonna suggest that we move to strike this part of the application, just to tighten up the process a little bit. Wayne, anything on that? It's an erroneous reference to a set of standards that are inapplicable to our proceeding.
If Werner doesn't have a problem with it, and that it's not going to send him back to previous things.
Yeah, and I never recall this even being a subject matter, so maybe all the home occupations we've had before, to my recollection, never were in
the
shoreland or resource protection.
So there is so if you go to,
Abenaki?
no, but that's a good point. So if
Darn close.
you go to Article 9, so which is a Board of Appeals, so this is where you all live in terms of your authority. And under H, Article 9 well, it's the last item in that Article 9, so that would be Article 9.2H. So conditional uses. So it gives the specifics there, but it makes a circular reference back to 10.10 B1 A through H for the shoreland zone.
Oh, it does. Oh, very good. Well then, and this is 1010B, is this 1A through H?
I'm just gonna double check that. 10.10 B1, A through H, yes.
It is. So maybe we just need the
I think it
reference amended.
It couldn't reference, it could just reference your performance standards in Article 9.
Warner, what would you like to see us do with regard to this? I know you're talking in the future, we'll make sure that we can correct any kind of erroneous reference. Given that reference in Article 9, I think we just, then not strike this, but strike the reference to section 510. Or amend it to,
10-10,
well, it's 510 in the application.
I know, but it should
Yeah.
be 10-10.
But it should be 1010B.
Well, I think it should, it should take you through Article 9. Because Article 9, for zoning board of appeals purposes, it should go through Article 9, which will lead you to 1010.
The form should not be
Yeah.
1010, because then that's planning board.
So you're,
I mean, I think that.
It's a fine line.
It's a fine detail, but
Well, it's a-
Article
It
9
gives us-
gives the authority for the zoning board to look at it through Article
Right, through the,
1010.
so
B1,
would
A
you
through H.
propose that that reference be to Article 9?
9.2 H,
92H?
yeah, 92H, 2.
to,
Though, nine to H2. Though I'm not sure the language would be quite like this. Well, I do want to proceed on this application tonight as submitted. So I don't want you to be worrying about it, I'm just trying to address this. Well, would the board be comfortable in just looking at this evening and, at least for our purposes, amending the reference to 5.10 to 92H2?
5.10?
Well, it is 5.10.
Right, but yeah,
and
we'll
we'd
cross
amend
that
that,
out, right.
Correct.
9.2H2.
Strike the reference to from
Works.
5.10.
For this
Comfortable with that,
application
James?
only, and then we'll wordsmith it with,
then we'll wordsmith the
Warner.
application
Yeah, we'll
form
correct
at
the
another
application.
time.
I think that's reasonable.
That works.
Wayne?
If you change it to that, it does say that we have to act, correct? We have to,
We've got to walk through
we need
the
to make a positive
1010B,
finding.
1A to H
Yeah.
requirement.
So we would have,
I think we need to.
okay. As opposed to eliminating it and
Which was
saying
a
that we,
bad idea to begin with.
that's where I was going.
So yes, would you agree with that, Wayne?
As opposed to eliminating, yes, at least make a statement
At this time?
and why we did it.
All right. Well, then what I would like, I'm going to suggest to the board, what I'd like to do is with regard to this application and until the application form may be modified for future ones, if it's not modified in time, that in page 2 of the conditional use application form for the home occupation, that number 5, make the reference to the zoning ordinance to not to be section 5.10, but instead, for our purposes the evening, we will consider it a reference to section 9.2.H.2.
There's a quiz on this later, so I hope you're paying attention.
I refer to item 5 in the application.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
That's a good idea. So all in, second that?
Second.
All in favor of that? Okay. Okay, so be it. That was a unanimous vote. And so that's how we'll at least temporarily address, we will definitively address this application under that context today, this evening, and then we'll work on the application form another time. Thanks for finding that one. Okay. Something else?
What's a voting, what's membership voting? What's a full board? 5?
Full board, well,
Seven.
quorum is
7?
4, a full
Voting?
board is 7.
So
7 voting.
he's
He is a
okay to
full-fledged
vote.
member,
okay to vote.
Okay.
just in the nick of time. Okay, so we have 2 applications this evening. Both from, Deborah, do you pronounce your last name Bauman? So interestingly, on the agenda, one is from Deborah R. Bauman and one is from Deborah Bauman. I didn't know if that was done just to differentiate between the 2 applications or not. So the first one, we'll take them in order, and the first one is as follows. The applicant is seeking residential rental accommodations approval for her existing single-family home. The property is located at 14 Harbor Drive, tax map 21, block 10, lot 4, in the Village Residential East Zone. So the applicant is here, and so I'm going to, we'll hear from the applicant, we'll hear from the code officer, we'll ask anybody in the audience if they have anything afterwards, and then we'll see if we have any questions in addition and deliberate thereafter. So without further ado, please proceed.
I'm Deborah Bauman. I live at 14 Harbor Drive, Kennebunkport. That's in the Land's End subdivision in Cape Porpoise. And I'm seeking approval for residential rental accommodations to rent 2 rooms in my home. And on the application, I tried to go down the regulations and address each one in order, so I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody off the cuff have any questions?
Hey, Paul, the only question I had on number 4, code compliance, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors.
So that's, that requirement will be, if we grant the application, then it will be conditioned upon that review being subsequent to the approval of this evening.
Okay, that was my question. So that's when that happens afterwards.
Yeah, that's the one that happens afterwards.
Perfect.
James, anything?
Nothing.
Wayne?
No, looks good to me.
I have one question.
Please.
All right, knowing that it's a private road and a private association out there on Land's End, your homeowners association or road maintenance association has a road commissioner? Has this been passed by them, even though that is not really our jurisdiction, but it still is a private matter for your Land's
So it
End?
is a statutory road association. I didn't ask the road commissioner specifically. I'm the president of the Land's End Association. I didn't think to ask the road commissioner, because there's nothing in our bylaws that refers to this at all.
I'm just going to echo something that Karen was saying, that whether you need permission from the road association or the homeowners association is actually not relevant to our proceeding here.
Okay,
That's separate jurisdiction, that's their jurisdiction. So in effect, you could get approval from us, and if you needed their approval, they could deny. But we don't govern that, and we can't use that for our own particular guidance here.
okay.
But thanks for including the bylaws. So you're looking to do 2 rooms, and you know the restrictions with regard to the 2 rooms you can rent out. Do you know how often you can rent them out and for what
I
period
do.
of time?
Only once per week.
Okay. And then you seem to have addressed all the other criteria that we have in the section that governs us. When do you hope to commence that if you get approval this evening?
Probably this summer.
And are you thinking you're going to be doing that more seasonally, or you're going to be doing that year-round?
I may do it prelude, but otherwise probably seasonally.
Probably seasonally. And I had a question on the parking. This is kind of overlapping a little bit with your next application, but since they're both the same parking plan. The two spaces on your plan that are identified as 4 or 5, which really pertain to our next issue, but are these existing spaces today?
They are.
And do these spaces meet the required sizing of a parking space?
They do.
Warner?
They're actually a little bit wider than is required.
A little bit more, and they need to be 20 by 10?
Correct.
Okay, I don't know, but please, I don't think we have any other questions for you, so thank
Okay.
you very much, please. Let's see, this will be another exciting review of,
Same.
yes, it will be very much so. Warner, do you have anything to add to this?
No.
Thank you, Warner. All right, then I'm going to we've opened the public comment period of this hearing. Is there anybody who's in the audience that wishes to make a comment with regard to this application? Okay, hearing none. Then I'm going to close this part of the public hearing and then bring it back up to the board. Anybody get any questions with regard to this application?
I think it's meeting our short list of requirements. Private road and anything else will just have to be up to road commissioner, but, I had read some road policy stuff out there, and it's more about parking on your property, and again, that's a private situation, as long as you're not creating more traffic flow for your neighbors to create a nuisance or anything. But your land totally has enough space to park. I know we're trying to take one application at a time.
We are,
But
yeah.
they do sort of overlap, because if we have, can we open that up, or should we just wait?
No, we need to conclude this one
Okay.
first. So this is primarily under section 610.6. No, sorry, that's the residential parking specs, 714. So the performance standards, which we need to review, which the application seems like it has addressed, I'm just going to tick them off to make sure that everybody is in agreement that this application meets them in the statements that are being made by the applicant, so that no separate kitchen or cooking facilities are provided for or use, it should say used by the roomers. Number 2, no sign is located on the premises advertising the availability of rooms for lease or rent to roomers. There'll be no signs associated with this. Number 3, no alteration or change of the dwelling unit in its exterior appearance is made to accommodate the presence of roomers. Number 4, the bedrooms being rented shall be inspected by code enforcement and shall have code-compliant smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in addition to complying with current building code requirements for primary and secondary means of escape. But that would be if we do approve a condition of approval that inspection be conducted after our meeting. Number 5, the rooms occupied by the roomers do not have a separate entrance from the outside. 6, the rooms occupied by the roomers are within the principal structure. 7, the roomers use utilities that are not separately metered from those used by the remaining occupants of the dwelling unit. Number 8, one off-street parking space per room rented shall be required as per Article 10.6.6. And finally, 9, the owner of the residential rental accommodation shall remain in the residence while the rooms are being rented. So that, all of those items that are the requirements have all been asserted affirmatively by the applicant in her applications. I really don't have any questions with regard to this application. And I don't
Ready
think,
for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
I move we accept the, let's see if we can get this clear.
Residential rental accommodation.
Yeah, right. I move that we accept this request for residential rental accommodation by Deborah R. Bauman at 14 Harbor Drive,
And
in Kennebunkport.
And before seconding that, and I'd add to it that approval be subject to, if approved, subject to a subsequent inspection by the code enforcement officer as per the
I can agree with that.
governing section. I hear a
Second?
second as amended.
Yep.
Second as amended. All right, all in favor? That's a unanimous vote. Okay, it is approved. Thank you very much. Second application. As stated on the agenda, it's also by Deborah Bowman. The applicant is seeking a home occupation approval for her existing single-family home. The property is located at 14 Harbor Drive, tax map 21, block 10, lot 4 in the Village Residential East Zone. So, now that you're so familiar with the process, Deborah, would you mind taking a stand?
So I'm still Deborah Bauman. I do residential design, sole proprietor of the business. I don't have any other employees. And there's a portion of my house where I have an office set up, a computer, a printer. And I'm seeking approval for the home occupation in my residence.
Have you been, is this something you've been doing for a period of time and you're seeking the approval at this time?
A couple of years, and I kept thinking I was going to have an office elsewhere, and at this point, I don't think I will, so
Okay.
that's why I'm seeking to have it approved.
And you've discussed this with the code officer beforehand? You've spoken to the
I
code
have.
officer before your
I have.
application? Does anybody have any questions for Deborah?
How much of it, like, one of the conditions is the home occupation can't take
Exceed
up more than
20%.
20% of the floor space, so I
That's
want to
right.
know how big is your office compared to your,
It's 160 square feet, and it takes up 13.6%.
was that in the application?
Yeah.
Number 7.
Okay.
Number 7,
And there'll be no sign.
no sign.
And so you think that visits will be limited? A lot of times you leave and go where you need to
I
go?
I do, 95% of the time. Maybe 2 times a year I'll have, it might be a potential new client who would come to my house to look at what I did in my own renovation. But I don't have conferences there, it's always on-site.
So with regard to the plan that you gave us for the parking, I think you indicated that the spaces 1 and 2, the garage and the first close to the house space are walk through the parking, if you would, just for the record, on how all of the spaces are allocated to the uses that you've laid out before us.
So I'm required to have the 2 parking spaces because of being a residence. So one of my cars goes in the single-car garage, and then there's another available space next to that. So I would call that 2, could be
Yeah.
3. And then there is still another 10 by 20 space next to that.
And are you allocating that, are these all mix and match, or are you allocating that one to the home occupation?
Do I,
Not for
I was
my
gonna mix and
purposes.
match. I mean, I'm thinking if I'm renting the rooms, I'd probably prefer that they park at 4 and 5.
At 4 and 5. So you have the 2 for the 2 roomers, and then you have the 2 for the residential requirement, and then you have the 5th space, which is the way you've laid it out, number 3, which would be for your, any traffic that you had with regard to the home
If a
occupation.
client came to visit, they could park there. Yeah.
Okay. No signage. Some of this is quite obvious. So Warner, this, oh, well, thank you, Dick, thank you. So Warner, could you come up for 1 second? Or should I be going to Matt?
Put Matt on the spot, yeah.
Hey, Matt. No,
almost made it through this.
Matt's sitting right here, let's go to Matt.
I'll play backup.
Perfect.
So Matt, with regard to the, the primary use is a residence. There's an approved residential rental accommodations now for 2, subject to your subsequent approval of it meeting all the requirements necessary after your inspection. And then now this will introduce another use. So are all the uses compatible in terms of the number of uses that the property would be supporting?
I believe they do. I don't think it changes the use at all. It's still a residence with 2 bedrooms being used and a home office.
So all good in the eyes of the
All
code
good.
enforcement?
Yeah.
They're all allowed. You can have all those multiple uses in the shoreline zone. Not a problem.
Should be, yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
not changing anything on the exterior.
Well, they're all defined as accessory to the single-family home use. So these are all accessory, these are accessory uses, no different than, than a detached, a detached garage may be, as an accessory. It doesn't rise to the level of requiring an additional lot size requirement, which is typically the question, in the shoreland zone, is whether or not it constitutes another principal use. So if it's another principal use, then you're adding another lot size requirement. With an accessory use, it doesn't trigger another lot size requirement.
And out of curiosity, Warner, is there any kind of cap on the number of accessory, well, is the residential rentals considered to be, does that come in under the definition of an accessory use or not?
It's a good question. I believe that it does. It qualifies as an accessory use because it's specifically tied to a single-family home, to an existing single-family home. And so it doesn't show up as another principal use, on the property. No different than a home lock. It can't exist. It can't exist without the principal.
Without the primary? Yeah.
That's right, without the primary.
So is there any cap, I know that, and I think we crossed this river one time before where there were 2 uses that we debated, so I'm just kind of more clarifying the record for our future reference, but there's no stated cap on the number of accessory uses that can accompany a primary use as long as all the requirements that each accessory use adds on to the use of the property are met?
Not for this, I would say not for this particular combination. There are other combinations where it specifically discusses, multiples, and I'll have to find that.
I didn't mean to
I'll
put you on the
I'll
spot.
have
I
to find
didn't know
that
if you-
combination for you, but there is a provision that doesn't permit, I believe it's the accessory apartment. If there's an accessory apartment and a home occupation can't be in the same.
That's right.
But
That's
that's not the
not the
case in
case.
this particular application.
Okay.
But beyond that, I would just expect to see that the performance standards be met.
Okay.
And she's meeting the parking. And again, abutters were all notified of this meeting,
Correct.
Yeah.
and they all showed up.
And so since we're going to consider in this application one of the section 9.2H2, we've all heard about, and then how that makes us kind of refer out to section 10.10B, which is the standards that are under the planning board section, but it seems that we're kind of slid in that direction. Do you have any questions about the conformance with these?
No, no,
Okay.
I do not.
Anybody question for
I
me?
thought you were gonna put Matt on.
Oh, it was, well, that's right, I bounced off of you, Matt. Matt seemed happy to bounce back. You agree with everything he's saying, Matt?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good call.
Good answer.
Good, really good answer. Thank you, Wayne. Thanks, Warner.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think it was good that you broke down the size, because we would have questioned that, so I'm glad you had all that in your application for us.
So questions with regard, anybody got any comments or questions with regard to this before we take a walk through? Karen, anything?
Nothing, she's stating no sign, no exterior sign, because I always question that, but yeah, I have no other questions.
April?
No, I don't have any other questions right now.
Jim?
Two very complete apps, very nice, thank you.
Point?
Thanks for
I agree with
your
Jim.
hard work.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. They're very clear and answer all the questions.
Yeah, thank you for spelling everything out clearly. So our governing section, primary governing section is 7.6. So 7.6 is a reasonably long section, which I don't think, does anybody think we need to read all of these entries onto the record this
I,
evening?
I would move that we waive the reading of all of this.
A second on that?
Second,
It's well defined in the application.
Everybody agree with that waiver of the reading?
Agree.
Point?
I'm good.
April, Karen, I am as well. So as we're considering this, we are looking at everybody's read this, and everybody's familiar with it, but we're looking under 7.6 of home occupation, A, and then more particularly B, and under 7, all the subsets under 7, and then 8 and 9, but in addition, because of the location, are you in the shore, I can't recall, are you in the shoreland or the resource protection? Shoreland zone. And these are a limited number of considerations for the shoreland, that the use will not result in unsafe or unhealthful conditions, accelerated erosion or sedimentation, water pollution, damage to spawning grounds, etc., damage to vegetation, obstruction of visual points, floodplain development concerns, everything seems to be in order. So if there's no questions with regard to this application, and no need for further discussion of this application, then I will entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the home occupation for 14 Harbor Drive, presented by Deborah R. Bauman. No other conditions.
I'll second that.
All in favor? And again, a unanimous vote. Granted. Thanks for your application. Thanks for doing a good job.
Good luck with all that, that's,
Yes. We get discounts though on home design, don't
So, that's it for business, boys and girls.
that's it.
That's it. Sorry, Matt, that I didn't default back to you, but I lost my head and I went in the direction
I
wrong.
won't even ask when the next meeting is.
No, it's time for you to make the motion.
Anybody got questions before we wrap it up?
See?
Move to adjourn?
There you go.
Second? All in favor?
Stop all.
So moved. We're adjourned. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Till the next time.
See you next semester.